friends, Krista here. Thank you so much for stopping by Books and Jams. Today it is time to talk about my June TBR. I always love a new month and thinking about what's coming up and what I'm going to read for that month, and I have loved this spring having a very minimal TBR. I do have a little bit more on this one, and that's only because I'm adding 2 of my library books that are already overdue and I already owe fines and I cannot renew them. So I'm just holding on to them because I really want to read them. So these are going to be high priority, and I'll talk about those in a minute. But first, every month I give my patrons 3 choices for a book, and they decide which one we're going to read the next month. And for June, we are going to be reading The Orphan Collector by Ellen Marie Wiseman. I am really excited to read this book. It is one of my NetGalley books, so that will help towards that goal. And it's also on my recommendations cart for this year because some of you picked this off of my TBR for me to read this year. I have read one other Ellen Marie Wiseman book, and that was The Life She Was Given, which I absolutely loved. This one takes place in 1918, which is when the Spanish flu happened, and it takes place in Philadelphia, which was so severely hit by the Spanish flu. We follow 13-year-old Pia, who is a German immigrant, and I believe she's orphaned with her 2 brothers, and she is taking care of them. She goes out to find food or work one day, and I guess while she's gone, her brothers disappear. She doesn't know what happened to them. We also follow this woman named Bernice, who is trapped in this cloud of grief because her baby just died a few days ago. Bernice is very frustrated with the immigrant situation, and then the Spanish flu hits and everything goes bonkers. I just think that this is going to be so good. It's going to be so good. There's a bit of a mystery in here, historical fiction set during the Spanish flu in Philadelphia. I cannot wait to read this with my patrons. If you're at all interested in joining us, think about it. I also have my BookTube spin book for round 2. I did not read this in May, so I'm moving it to June. We have 2 months to read them. It will not take me very long. I just haven't picked it up yet. That's Sourdough by Robin Sloan. I think this has a little bit of magical realism in it. I'm not quite sure, but Lois is a software engineer. She stops every day at this bakery. She kind of doesn't have a lot of relationships with other people, but she does strike up a relationship with these 2 brothers who run the bakery. But I think something happens and they're either leaving or moving or something, and they leave her their sourdough recipe, their sourdough starter, I believe, actually. And so that kind of changes her future, her course of life. And I don't know how or why or what's going to happen, but I am going to read that in June. It's going to happen. Before I get into my buddy reads, I have one other book that is a patron recommended pick. Every month, my $8 patrons get to pick a book that they want me to read, and I put them all in a jar and pick one out. And this month, I will be reading Cocaine Blues by Carrie Greenwood. And I believe this is an Australian murder mystery series. This is the first book in the series. Lee, the lovely Lee, who is a subscriber and patron, she picked this book because she wants me to read an Australian author, and I'm thrilled about that. I also love murder mysteries. I just don't read them very often, and I've kind of been in the mood for mysteries lately, so I'm really excited that I picked this book. And also, it has a Netflix adaptation, which I'm not going to start until I read at least the first book. I should probably read a little ways into the series before starting the adaptation, but I don't know. I don't know if you know how far does the adaptation go. Like, if I just read the first book, will I be okay? I don't know. But I'm really excited about that. So thank you, Lee, for that recommendation. And I'll be reading Cocaine Blues in June. Then I have 2 buddy reads for the month. First of all, I'm going to be reading Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, and possibly further into the series. I'm not sure how fast or slow we're going to read the trilogy. I'm reading this with Amanda from The Curly Reader, Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand, and I believe Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library. I think all 4 of us are going to be reading this together. I've already seen the Netflix show. I binged it. I think Amanda has too. And I think Lindsay and Sarah are waiting until they read them to watch the show. So yeah, I'm excited. I have already read the first 2 books in this trilogy, but I never did finish and read the 3rd one. So I did recently haul that 3rd one. So I'm ready to go and binge straight through them, hopefully. But that's going to get read. And then I'm also going to be reading The Seven Sisters, starting another series this month, The Seven Sisters by Lucinda Riley. And I'm going to read this with Reads and Eats. She is a Scottish booktuber, and we have been talking about doing a buddy read together. And I'm very excited to read another Lucinda Riley. I've only read one so far. And if you've been keeping an eye on my hauls, you'll know that a couple months ago, I hauled 3 or 4 books from this Seven Sisters series from Book Outlet. And so I am going to get started with this first one. I've heard good things about it, so I'm really excited to do a buddy read with a new friend and read another Lucinda Riley. And then just the 2 library books. These are my main priority as we start June. As soon as I finish my May books, I'm going to be reading these 2. And the first one is Remember by Lisa Genova. This is a nonfiction about memory, the science of memory, how our brains work, how our brains create and hold memories. Lisa Genova is a neuroscientist. She has written a number of fiction books that I have loved. I've read the first 30 pages or so and really love how it's written. I find it very approachable, and yet I'm going to learn a ton about our brains and how they work. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's not super long, so it shouldn't take me very long. And this is one of my anticipated reads from winter. And another winter anticipated read is The Nature of Fragile Things by Susan Meissner. I really want to read this. This one takes place in San Francisco, early 1900s, when there was an earthquake and a fire, and we follow 3 women. So I think I've talked about this enough on my channel. I'm really looking forward to reading this book. And I don't think it's a little bit thicker, but I don't think it's going to take me too long because I love how Susan Meissner writes, and I feel like I'm going to just love it. But I haven't been able to find this one on audio, so I need to read it in print before my fines are more expensive than the book itself. So here is my tiny TBR. It's not that tiny, actually. It's 7 books, 6 here, and then the one that I don't own. I did find it on ebook through Hoopla, through my library app. So I will be able to read that as an ebook in June. But that's what I'm going to be reading this month. I would love to hear from you. What are you most excited to read in the month of June? And that's all for me today. I would love to chat with you down in the comments, and I would love for you to give this a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll be talking to you in another video very soon. Bye.